All right, you guys, in this first section, we're talking about building histograms. So when you're building histograms, you're going to have some data values, and those data values need to be organized into a frequency table. Sometimes you might get the frequency table first, and then in that case, you just have to build the histogram. In this case, we just had the data values. So what we're going to do is we're going to first tally these up. So this 70, I'm just going to tally these and mark them out. 55, 61, 80, 85, 72, 65, 40, 74, 68, and 84. So we got those tallied. Big thing that you need to remember about some of this stuff is that if you're making your own frequency tables, don't forget that these intervals have to be the same size. So in this case, we go from 40 to 49. So that's 40 to 49. There should be 10 numbers. Same thing, 50 to 59, 10 numbers, 60 to 69, 10 numbers, and so forth. Notice that there's no difference between how much we do. And that's going to come into play later when we actually build our histogram. So since I have these tallies, I'm going to go ahead and write out my frequencies. There was one number in between 40 and 49, one number in between 50 and 59, three numbers 60 and 69, three numbers 70 and 79, and three numbers 80 and 89. So you have this frequency table that we just created, and then you have intervals at that right here on your left-hand side. So now what I want to be able to do is I'm going to create this frequency table. Now this might look familiar. This is something that I just stole from y'all's practice a while back. But one thing that we had to remember when building a frequency table, there were some key things that we have to remember. Number one, your histograms, the columns for your histograms have to be the same width. And so I'm going to kind of plan this out on purpose to where I can make my widths. And I'm going to do mine where I start with my starting point. So 40, I'm going to go out 3 spaces. I'm going to start the next one 50, 3 spaces, start the next one 60, 3 spaces, start the next one 70, 3 spaces, and start the next one 80. And don't forget that in this case, you draw like this little heartbeat looking thing to denote that there is space in between this 40 and this y-axis, which should be considered 0. And so in this case, since we didn't start at 0, we can't have our first column be up against that y-axis. And so we're going to put that little heartbeat to denote there's a lot of space in between that axis and this first x coordinate or x variable of 40. X value, excuse me. And so now what I want to be able to do is I'm going to go ahead and plot my y-axis over here. Notice that my frequencies only go, I have 1 and then I have 3, so I don't need that much. So I'm going to spread them out a little bit. I'm going to call that 1. So that was up 1, 2, 3 spaces. So up 3 more. I'm going to call that 2. Up 3 more. I'm going to call that 3. Up 3 more. I'm going to call it 4. And you don't really have to do that last one, but I'm just doing it for the look of it. But so now 40 to 49 is going to go up to 1, so I'm going to draw that. Up to 1, I'm going to go over, I'm going to come down. 50 to 59, same thing at 1. So notice I don't really have to go up because it was the same height. 60 to 69, I'm going up to 3, and then over and down. 70 to 79 was the same height. And then 80 to 89 was the same height. One thing that I forgot to do is I forgot to go ahead and denote the next starting point where it would be at would be 90. That doesn't mean that that interval goes to 90. That interval, remember, was at 89. But then we're going to end up having something that looks like this. And I'm going to kind of do a different color so you can see it. So we got that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. So you have some artifacts on the wall that give you some reminders. Number one, if you don't start with zero, use the y. If you start with zero, use your y-axis. Which in this case we started with 40, so we had to leave that blank. You only put gaps in the histogram. Remember that we butt these up together. This is continuous data, so we only put gaps in the histogram if we have a frequency of zero. Your intervals must have the same amount of numbers. We talked about that over here with our frequency table. And then to label your x-axis, you're going to do some specific things. The way I chose to do it was I used my starting values, and I put those at the start. Another thing that you could have done, which I've seen some people do, is you actually use these intervals. And in that case, you don't put them at the start. You would put them right in the middle as 40 to 49, 50 to 59, and so forth. The reason why I don't like that is just because it seems kind of cumbersome, and also it gets kind of crowded together versus if you put your starting points instead. It's a lot nicer. So go ahead and work on the problems dealing with that.